There comes a point in every mental health professional's career where we wonder, where's the line between client safety and what I'm responsible for and where my authority lies versus our clients just being autonomous individuals and being able to choose what they want to do for themselves. These are some of the things that kept me up at night as a newer private practice clinician. Throughout my career, the populations that I've served have always been people who have experienced really, really hard things, from combat veterans to domestic violence survivors. So, inevitably, at some point, when we're dealing with heavy trauma, we're going to have situations where our clients may be suicidal, our clients may have some self harm behaviors or non suicidal self injury. There's another very long, unnecessary term that they're calling it these days, but all means the same thing. There are also times that inevitably we end up in a position where our client may do better in a higher level of care. So I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all the spoiler alert up front. In private practice, there are very, very, very few instances in which you have the ability to force a client to do anything. So, in the context of this conversation, when we refer to authority, that's going to be what you do with your license as a part of your job. So, assessing, diagnosing, and treating mental health disorders. That is within your authority for these situations where we have clients who are higher risk or have some concerns that maybe need to be treated in a higher level of care, whatever that might look like, your authority is going to be in the assessment realm. We are assessing the risk. We are doing the safety plans if we need to. We're documenting. So, authority is all about your actual job duties and the knowledge that you have underneath the license that you have. Also, in this context, you have the authority to take this presentation that's in front of you, translate what you're seeing, conceptualize it, translate what you're seeing based on your education and training, and translate that for the client to understand, okay, this is what I'm noticing. This is how it can affect you. This is what I think would happen if we don't do whatever recommendation. And you also have the authority to make that recommendation. What you don't have the authority to do is force a client to take your recommendation. Typically, that's where your authority stops. We can give them everything we can clinically, but we can lead the horse to water, can't make them drink, right? We know they're thirsty. We know they're probably bordering dehydrated. It's really getting dangerous for their health, but we can't force them to drink the water. So that's where being a more relational type of therapist kind of bites you in the butt because this can cause really bad anxiety for you as the clinician, knowing this is what would be helpful for this client, but this client is not accepting the recommendation for whatever reason. So in your earlier clinician years, you'll spend some time trying to find your footing on what's normal and what's not, what's expected in a therapeutic relationship, where boundaries are and where they should be. I know for me, I had to reevaluate what boundaries look like in a therapeutic relationship with me because I am more of a laid back, lax, relational, like homegirl type therapist. But at a point, you recognize that there needs to be some structure, and that is all about kinda wading through that water to figure out what that needs to look like on a case-by-case basis. So whenever we are more relational type therapists and we have these situations where our clients are suffering and hurting horribly, and we know that a thing, whatever that intervention is, whether it is going to a higher level of care, whether it is seeking more support from the community or their friends and family members, it could be trying to find housing resources, whatever that case may be. Whenever we make the recommendation that we know based on our clinical judgment would be helpful, and our clients don't go with that recommendation, sometimes we internalize it as clinicians. Um, if one, just if they don't take it at all, but then if two, something ends up happening to that client after we made the recommendation. Now we're going back in our head thinking, what did I do? What did I do? What should I have done? How could I have made sure that this didn't happen? And the reality of the situation is you couldn't, because what happens with that client after they leave our chair is not our business. And I know. Everything that you've ever learned in your curriculum and your training has been harm reduction and trying to avoid our clients being unsafe, being the safe space. But what they don't tell you is we can't force safety. That is actually quite the oxymoron. As you continue to do the work in the field, your clinical intuition will get clearer and clearer, and you'll be able to trust that a little bit better. But when you're an earlier career clinician, whether you're LPC, LMFT, social worker, whatever discipline you're in, there is a learning curve that happens where we're trying to develop intuition, and nervous system dysregulation is what's screaming. That's what we can hear louder because that is what we're used to. Our nervous system flexing and flowing and moving and shaking versus building the muscle of that clinical intuition. So what causes that anxiety and the rumination, the thought spirals, the 2 a.m. Google searches, ChatGPT, should I do X, Y, and Z? Did I need to do X, Y, and Z? Earlier in your career, a lot of that is going to come from your nervous system being dysregulated because we got a lot at risk, right? We have client safety that's risky and sticky. We have our license that is on the line. We have our livelihood and our freedom that's on the line if we mess up, right? So there's a lot that your nervous system is perceiving as a threat, and that's going to send you off into those spirals sometimes. That's okay. That happens in the beginning. It'll get better. All you need to do is make sure you did what you were supposed to do. Did you evaluate the risk? If you identified a risk, did you do a safety plan? Did you ensure that the client is aware of what their safeguards are and the availability of resources? Are we working out the treatment plan so that this is gonna so the treatment plan will cover what we need to cover to treat this? Is this now outside of our wheelhouse? Is the acuity higher than what we're trained to do? And maybe we need to either take it to consultation or we need to refer out because something else has um, manifested or presented. So those are the types of things that you need to worry about as a clinician about, you know, what you're actually supposed to do. Where that line gets a little bit blurred and gets a little bit confusing for a lot of people is at what point is it actually my responsibility to do a little bit more than that? And the answer, very clean cut, so there's no confusion. If there's imminent risk of harm to that client or anyone else, that's when we need to start digging a little bit more and figuring out if there's something more that we need to actively do. So, if I'm a virtual therapist, I treat everybody via Zoom. So if I have a client and I see that this client is actively trying to harm themselves, or if they are actively in psychosis and I think that they're gonna get hurt some kind of way. Okay, then maybe I'll do a welfare check. Maybe I will contact an emergency contact if I think that harm is imminent, risk is imminent. Imminent means it's going to happen very soon, right? So if that is the case, okay, then maybe we'll reach out to some people. But if it's not imminent, if maybe client's been suicidal for a while, but today they seem like they're okay, and then next session they don't show up, that's not a reason for me to contact any emergency contacts. It's not a reason for me to send a welfare check because at my last contact, there was no imminent risk. Remember that imminent risk is in the moment. Is something happening right now in this moment that is impeding our client's ability to remain safe? That's when we may need to do a little bit extra. Beyond that, clients suffering, clients hurting, We want the best for the client. A higher level of care would be good for the client. None of that equals imminence. Inevitably, there's somebody out there right now thinking, what about APALs or 5150s, depending on what part of the country you're in? In the context of private practice, I can't think of a single time when you would ever be APALing anybody or 5150ing anybody. At worst, at worst, we have that imminent risk that's presented, and now we're sending maybe a welfare check, which is calling the police department or fire department. So at very worst, we may be sending a welfare check where officers and paramedics are going to go check on our client, and then it'll be up to them to determine if the client needs to be APAL'd or 5150 because they're at imminent risk of harm to themselves. Even then, we've sent the welfare check. We sent somebody to check on 'em. That's still not our call if they're hospitalized or if they're sent to a higher level of care. If they are APAL'd or if they are 5150'd, then that whole process is now out of your hands. Client is no longer in your direct care, they're going to see somebody at a higher level of care, and there will be assessments within that system to make sure that they get to where they're supposed to be. There are 2 primary reasons that I've seen in my years of private practice where a client won't accept the recommendation, especially my clients know I love them down and they trust me. So most of the time, if I say something is good as gold because they trust that I have their best interest in heart. If my clients aren't going with the recommendation that I've given them, one of 2 things are happening. 1, they don't have the capacity beyond the time that we're in session to then follow up and engage in the resources that I provided. So you may have a client who has some heavy depression or some nervous system collapse or freeze, and they're not able to have enough access to energy and clear thought and drive and motivation to be able to access the resources outside of the session. In those cases, I spend a little bit more time within the session time doing more case management type stuff because it's still clinically indicated for us to take a little bit of a segue, even if we're not actively processing things. It's more appropriate to maybe do a little bit of body doubling to make sure they're able to at least get the process started. I'm a hand holder. You will hear me say throughout this entire YouTube page that if a hand needs to be held during therapy, most of the time Imma hold it because it's not our clients choosing not to do things. A lot of the time it comes down to their nervous system can't tolerate what needs to be done. So, that's number 1. Number 2 reason that a client may not accept a recommendation from me is the lack of resources. So, sending a client to a higher level of care sounds great in theory, sounds fantastic in theory, but then you get them to a higher level of care, say a substance abuse treatment center or um, IOP, PHP. Even if they have insurance, most of the time there's going to be something they have to pay out of pocket, and a lot of people just can't afford that. If it is an intensive program or something where they're hospitalized and cut off from the rest of the world, how they gonna work? All of these considerations, for why people might not accept our recommendation, even though we know clinically it's the right call. So, try not to internalize it, try not to take it as a personal failure of your own or a personal attack on your professionalism, your expertise, because sometimes the clients just can't, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. One thing that you will learn in your career as you're building these clinical muscles is to be able to tolerate that discomfort of knowing this is the right call, but the client just won't be able to do it. Last little bit I'll mention before I wrap this video. I may do a part 2 on the opposite side of this when we do need to do a little bit more. But remember your scope, remember your setting. Most clinicians in private practice are not crisis clinicians. Stop thinking like a crisis clinician. Yes, we wanna mitigate risk. Yes, we wanna assess for that and move appropriately, but it's not our job to put our hand on the thing and physically move that thing, if you get where I'm coming from. So, be kind to yourself, love on yourself. This is a hard job, and when you stay in the field for long enough, you kinda forget that it's a hard job until it starts weighing on you, but it's hard. Y'all are doing hard shit. So, stay tuned for more mental health clinician-esque content, and I will see y'all on the next one.